Hi, my name's Nick Goode. I'm the Regional Manager for Macmillan Education for Central Europe, and I'm really pleased to be back here again in Georgia. So this week we've been doing a tour of 4 different cities around Georgia. We started off in Batumi, then we went to Kutaisi, then we went to Tel Aviv, and today we're here in Tbilisi. We work very closely with our local partner, the English Book in Georgia, and Maura and her team have done fantastically all this week to make these conferences possible. We also get a lot of other local support. For example, the Ministry of Education and Science in Georgia gives us a great deal of support in organising the conferences and inviting teachers to attend. So these conferences are really special to us because at Macmillan we're very passionate about English language teaching. And this means that we're not only passionate about providing first-class materials that teachers can use in class, but also supporting teachers in their continuous professional development. And we do that through various different teacher training projects. And these conferences form an important part of this. It gives us a unique opportunity to bring to Georgia some of the biggest names in ELT. For example, this week we've had Jim Scrivener, one of the world's leading experts in ELT, touring with us. We also had Philip Kerr, one of our leading author of titles such as New Inside Out and Straightforward, and these guys have been sharing their ideas with the teachers. We've also been very lucky to have a couple of very experienced teacher trainers who have done a lot of work for us before in Georgia, so really understand the needs of the teachers from a local viewpoint, and they are Teresa Doguelli and Maura O'Brien. It's been a fantastic week and I hope the teachers have really enjoyed it.
It's fantastic to see so many people here today. And you guys have all given up your Saturday and your precious life to come and take part in the conference. And that tells me something about you. It tells me that you guys are the most dedicated and hard-working English teachers in Tbilisi. So well done. These conferences wouldn't be possible without local support. And local support is very important to us at Macmillan Education. Our local partner here is the English Book in Georgia. And Maura and her team have done a fantastic job and worked very, very hard to get their brand new premises ready for the conference today. So thank you, Maura. Thank you very much. We also have great local support from the Ministry of Education and Science here in Georgia, and they're represented here today by Miss Natia. Thank you. We also have support from the British Council, and the British Council is represented here today by Mr. Zaza. Thank you very much. So these conferences are a great opportunity for us. And this opportunity is to bring to Georgia some fantastic speakers. And this year is no exception. We have a great lineup of speakers for you. So I'd like to introduce them one by one. Firstly, we have Jim Scrivener, who is one of the world's leading experts at ELT. We also have Philip Kerr, who's one of our leading Colsuntant authors. We have a lady who needs no introduction in Georgia, Teresa Doguelli, and also a very successful freelance editor and teacher trainer, Maura O'Brien. I hope that you'll enjoy their workshops and also find them very useful. At Macmillan, we're really passionate about English language teaching. Not only providing you with first-class textbooks, but also by providing you with support in your continuous professional development through teacher training and ongoing support. So I hope you have fun today, above all. And I'd like to pass over to my colleague at the Ministry, Mrs. Natia.
Დილამ შედობის პირველში გილოცავთ ყველა სულშინდელობას ასოცირების ხელშეკრულებას მე ვფიქრობ რომ ეს ძალიან მნიშვნელოვანი არის ჩვენი ქვეყნისთვის ძალიან დიდი მადლობა რომ მოგძალით. მე უამრავ კონფერენციაზე ვყოფილ ვარ, თქვენს ცხადია. უამრავ საერთაშორისო თუ ადგილობრივ შეხვედრაზე ვყოფილ ვარ და ამდენი მასწავლებელი ერთად, ასეთი ინტერესი სავსე დარბაზით მინდა უცბელი ვიყო არ მინახავს. დიდი მადლობა თქვენ რომ ხართ ასეთი კარგები, ასეთი მოტივირებულები და ასეთი დაინტერესებულები. ბუნებრივია განათლების და მეცნიერების სამინისტროსთვის თქვენ კარგად იცით რომ ინგლისური ენა როგორც საერთაშორისო სამეცნიერო საგანმანათლებლო საკომუნიკაციო ენა არის პრიორიტეტული ენა. თქვენ ხართ ის ადამიანები რომლებიც მომავალ თაობას აძლევთ იმის შანსს 21 საუკუნის კომპეტენციას დაერქვონ საერთაშორისო ენას, რომელიც მათ გზას გაუხსნის ცოდნისკენ, განათლებისკენ, მეცნიერებისკენ, სამსახურისკენ, მობილობისკენ და ასე შემდეგ. ამიტომ ჩვენ ვალდებულები ვართ სამინისტრო და სისტემა ვალდებულია ხელი შეუწყოს. ყველა მასწავლებელს ხელი შეგიწყოთ თქვენ. კეცვი ხრი თქვენი შრომის წინაშე, გისურვებთ წარმატებულ დღეს და გისურვებთ ზოგადად წარმატებას თქვენ საქმიანობაში. დიდი მადლობა.
Okay, so our first plenary speaker is Jim Scrivener.
I don't know if you saw in my biography, I lived in Tbilisi from 1982 to 1983 for 1 year. A long, long time ago, when dinosaurs walked on the earth. Long time ago. You're so young. It was before you were born. Well, some of you. So I lived in Tbilisi and I loved Tbilisi. I really learned to love the beautiful town and the beautiful countryside. And it's such a pleasure to come back again and see how things are the same and have changed. So the good things have stayed, but there's so much that's new and improved. The beautiful restoration work in Tbilisi is just wonderful. It makes me so happy to see a beautiful city, the most beautiful capital in the world, become even more beautiful. So that's a real pleasure. And it's a real pleasure. When I was teaching English in Tbilisi and I was teaching teachers, but how the attitudes have changed as well. It's wonderful. There weren't conferences like this in those days. And it's just amazing that so many people come here today for this conference. And it's so wonderful to come back to an independent Georgia. In those days, it was a very different kind of atmosphere, a very different kind of world. And now it's a free country, and that's just so wonderful. So I just wanted to start by saying how happy I am to be here. Thank you very much for inviting us to come here. But that's not the subject today. So I'm not going to talk about 1982. The topic today is called upgrade. Upgrade. Demand high to bring a grammar lesson alive. I'm going to do a little bit of talk for 5 minutes or so, but most of this I want to show you some practical teaching ideas. Just very practical stuff. There are some problems that I would like to suggest the answers to today. How can I help every individual student in my class to improve? It's quite easy to help 4 or 5 of the good students. You know, those ones who always put their hands up, who always answer questions. I can help them, but how can I help every student to improve, to get better? Well, there are some question marks there. I will try to answer that today. When a student says something in class, my automatic reaction is to say, oh, good. Mainly because I'm pleased they've said something, anything. But very often students say rubbish. Yes? You ask a student to say something and they say, and I still say good. What can I do instead of praising my students when they say very poor English? What could I do to help them? I don't know if any teachers here use drilling. Drilling used to be quite popular. Not many teachers drill their students nowadays. By drilling, I mean the teacher says a model of a sentence, and then everybody repeats the sentence. Not many teachers do that nowadays, I think. I don't know, maybe you do. But I'd like to suggest an alternative, a possible way of doing that in a different way. Something that happens in many, many classrooms, probably almost every single classroom. You say to the students, do this exercise, do exercise 2. And the students do exercise 2, maybe individually, maybe working in a pair. And then at the end you say, okay, let's check the answers. What's the answer to number 1? Good. What's the answer to number 2? Good. What's the answer to number 3? Good. And then you get to the end and you say, okay, very good. Now, let's do something different. I wonder if that really gets the value out of the exercise. I wonder if students really learn from that. I'd like to suggest something you can do with an exercise that maybe gets a little bit more learning out of it. Instead of teaching the whole class as if it's one level, what can I do? Because of course, one of the biggest problems that teachers complain about is, oh, my class has so many levels in it. My class is a mixed level class. Do you say that? Do you sometimes say that? I think every teacher says that because every class in the world is a mixed level class. Every class, the students are different levels. And even inside a single student, students are mixed level. Yeah? Maybe a student is good at grammar, but bad at speaking, and good at writing, and a little bit good at listening. Different levels inside one person. And another student has different levels to that. So every student is mixed level, and every class is mixed level. How can I teach the whole class as different levels, instead of pretending everyone is the same level? And instead of using explanation as a way of presenting grammar, what could I do instead of explanation? I'd like to show you one idea instead of simply explaining grammar. So those are the things that I would like to look at today. A few little teaching problems, and I will try to offer you at least one practical idea for each of those. And we'll look at that again at the end. But first of all, here's a little problem for you. Imagine you are an English teacher. Can you do that? Imagine you're an English teacher. Imagine you have a very high salary. No, that's impossible. I can't imagine that. It's too much, yes? Too much to imagine. No, imagine you're an ordinary English teacher, and you teach using a course book. It's a good course book, probably a Macmillan course book, but not necessarily. You teach using a course book, and you look and you see that tomorrow your next lesson has some grammar in it. It's got some relative clauses. Oh, relative clauses. Do you love relative clauses? Yes? Oh, I'm surprised. Okay, relative clauses. So that's in the book for tomorrow's lesson. Okay, so the question for you is, when you do the work in the course book tomorrow on relative clauses, and the learners study it and they do the exercises, by the end of the lesson, how good do you think they will be at relative clauses after that lesson? How good will they be? Will they be able to recognize relative clauses when they meet them in reading or listening? Recognize them? Will they be able to form the items in isolation, getting the stress right, getting variations, endings, etc.? Will they be able to do that? Will they be able to use relative clauses to express meanings that they want to say? Quite good. Different for different people, yes, certainly. In general for the class? Speak louder, please. They'll be able to recognize them, yes? They'll be able to recognise it. Okay, this is a question I've asked a number of teachers in different places, and sometimes teachers say, well, I think if I go in and I teach this grammar, and they study it and they do the exercises, they will probably be pretty good by the end of the lesson. That's what the point of the lesson is. The point of the lesson is that they learn this grammar, they become good at it.
Hello, my name's Jim Scrivener, and I'm a writer, mainly of methodology books, and I work in England, in the United Kingdom. I live in a small town called Hastings. The last week I've been travelling with my colleagues around Georgia. We started in Batumi, and then we went to Kutaisi and Tel Aviv, and we've just finished today in Tbilisi. And we've had a wonderful conference in each place where we've met English teachers from each town, and we've done presentations, plenaries and workshop presentations with these teachers. And we've had a lot of fun. We've really enjoyed our time in Georgia. We were hosted here by English Book in Georgia, who have been absolutely wonderful to us and looked after us and transported us and given us fantastic Georgian food and wine all the way. So we've had a great time. It hasn't been a holiday. We've been working very hard, but we hope that we've given some interesting presentations for teachers in Georgia. And I hope maybe if you didn't come this year, I think you can see some of the videos on the English Book in Georgia website. And maybe if you didn't come this year, perhaps you want to come next year or the year after, when I'm sure there will be more exciting presentations from Macmillan Education, who sponsor us, and English Book in Georgia.
This is my 4th time in Georgia. This time I've been over here doing the conference with Jim Scrivener, Philip Kerr, and Teresa Doguelli, and me, Maura O'Brien. And we've come over to do some trainings with the teachers on the topics that they have requested. So Jim Scrivener has been talking about maximising grammar in the classroom, Philip Kerr has been talking about translation, and Teresa Doguelli has been talking about emotional intelligence, and I have been talking about effective pair work and group work in the classroom. I chose this topic based on the fact that a lot of Georgian teachers have maybe 30 students in their classroom. It's not an awful lot of time for them to practice speaking English, so we looked at activities that teachers can use in the classroom to maximize speaking time. It's a very important topic because obviously English is about communication. And if you have 30 students in your class and you have 1 hour of English, you have on average 1 minute for each student to speak English in the classroom. And this adds up to 1 hour over an entire year. So what we were looking at doing was using activities in the classroom to try and increase the amount of time that students can speak English in the class and have fun. It's been a great experience for me. I've had lots of fun with my Georgian teachers. They've been the best students that I have ever had in my workshops. And we had a lot of fun and played lots of games.
You can say to adults, okay, before you speak, just think for 2 minutes. Just think for 2 minutes. But with teenagers, if you say just think for 2 minutes, they don't think. They find it very hard to think in silence. So we have a problem. They need to think about what they're going to say. They probably need a break. They probably want to use a bit of Georgian. And they won't think. Well, the solution here is to use an own language moment. To set up the task, check they've understood, and then tell them, okay, now I want you to do this speaking activity in Georgian. They will think this is strange. Of course it's a little strange. But what it does is it gives them time to think about the content of what they're going to say. They may even find some funny and interesting things to say. They do it, we need to make them do it quickly. But if they do it for 2 minutes in Georgian, they will probably afterwards be able to do it for 4 minutes or 5 minutes in English, because they've already thought about the content. So here, you've got a situation where 2 minutes of Georgian is generating 5 minutes of English, and that is better than 0 minutes of nothing. And there's a little trick, a very simple trick when you're doing this. Telephone time. If they're doing this in pairs, we've got 2, 2, 2, 2, etc. They do this with their pair in Georgian, but the second time they do it in English, we change the pairs. So it's 2 like this. So this means when we've changed the pairs, they've had time to practice it in Georgian, but they're now going to speak in English to somebody else, which means they have a reason to listen. Simple reason to listen. Okay? I'll also use these language moments in the middle of an activity, a speaking activity, when they get tired and they run out of things to say. Yeah? A further little twist which you might like to try is to begin the activity in Georgian for about 20 seconds, then clap your hands or tap and say, okay, now English only. And they've got to switch into English. English for about 20 seconds, 30 seconds, then back to Georgian. 20 seconds, back to English. And switch between the 2 languages. This is fun. Students actually enjoy doing this. It's also quite hard. But this activity of switching from one language to the other, which is called code switching, is what we do as a bilingual. We switch between the languages. So it's a natural activity. Okay? 5 basic techniques. These are really crucial things. Very few people use them in a systematic way. Some activities. I'm going to suggest about 3 or 4 activities. The first is assisted translation. When we give students a reading text, there's always a problem with vocabulary in a reading text. There are always going to be some words they don't understand. Yeah? And we give them the text. We don't want them to understand every word, because we want them just to do the task. But in the lesson, what happens almost always, please teacher, what does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? Or they get out their dictionaries and looking these words up. This is not what we want, but it's natural. When I'm studying another language, and the teacher says to me, Philip, don't worry about understanding every word, just do the task. Oh, sod off, I want to understand every word. I'm in the class to learn new words. That's my response. So it's normal and natural to want to understand everything, even if sometimes we teachers say it's not necessary. So when we're planning a lesson, there's a very, very simple solution, and some course books do it, but only the course books which are for one country, not the international course books, they can't. You look at the text, a text like this is a small part of the text, and with your class you know the students which words are going to be difficult, which are going to be easy. Well, if this is B1, the most fashionable coffee bars in the US serve coffee art. I think that all of the words are easy. Although I think that coffee art may be culturally strange for some. But the vocabulary is easy. The next sentence, artists in California draw leaves high. The verb, draw. I don't know why, but in my experience as a teacher, many students don't know this verb, draw. It's a high frequency word, but they don't know it. Well, so what I will do, because I've predicted this as a problem, is before I give the students the text, I will write the word draw on the board and I will write the translation next to it. I'll give them a little glossary. It takes me 20 seconds to write this glossary on the board. If I'm feeling lazy and I can't be bothered to write, I'll say, listen, you're going to read this text, there are 5 words you won't understand and I'll dictate them with the translations. Yeah? Now, this means that they can read the text, they may learn some of these words, but you may feel, this is not really challenging enough. Not really, it's making it too easy. If you want to make it harder, you can use this same glossary technique in a slightly different way. You look at the text, you predict the words which are difficult, no more than 5 or 6. If it's more than 5 or 6 or 7, you're using the wrong text, or the wrong course book. Yeah? You should use another text. 6, maybe, is fine. Before you give the students the text, don't write the English words on the board, just write the Georgian translations, mixed up. And you tell them, you're going to read this text, there are 6 words you probably don't know, here are the translations, so when you find a word you don't know, see if you can find the correct translation. It becomes a detective game. It becomes a kind of training of working out meaning from context. Use the glossary in that way. Okay? Simple. And I see no reason not to do it. And there is one reason why we don't do it in course books, and that is because if it's an international course book, we can't. There are too many languages. In the future, in the digital future of publishing, which the publishers are all talking about, when the students have laptops and tablets and smartphones, of course when they read a text digitally, they can just tap it and they'll get the translation. That's going to happen anyway. While we have books, we can use the board as a tool. Okay, another technique. Lost in translation. This is a follow-up activity to any text. It's a follow-up activity to any classroom activity, really. This is the text that the students have been reading. I put it into Google Translate. This is Google Translate. And I'm going to show this to the students. I'll photocopy it or project it. I don't speak Georgian, but I can judge how bad it is. Because what I can now do is I can take the Georgian text and translate it back again and see what happens. And this is very simple as an activity at the end of a lesson, and this is Google Translate training. 5 minutes maybe at the end, is they've studied a text, they've done the grammar, they've done the vocabulary. A bit of fun at the end, but it's valuable learning, is you give them the Google Translate, and their job is to correct the translation. So they've got the English text in the book, and they've got to look at the rubbish Georgian and correct it. And they should do this together, in pairs or in groups, discussing it. That's when the learning takes place. What is really valuable about this technique is the sorts of mistakes. Now, I tell you I don't speak Georgian, but I've looked at Russian. I've looked at English Russian on Google Translate. If you take a Russian text, put it into Google Translate, translate it into English, I can identify the mistakes. And you know what the mistakes are? They miss the articles. Of course they miss the articles, because there are no articles. They miss the verb to be. I Russian, not I am Russian. Yeah? They miss the prepositions, or many of the prepositions. And the mistakes that Google Translate makes with the grammar and the word order are usually the same sorts of mistakes that your students make. So this is drawing their attention to their own mistakes, the things they get wrong, but it's also training them to use this technology. And if we do this regularly, they very quickly learn the limitations of Google Translate, but it's a valuable, valuable technique. Okay? Slightly strange. Some of them need help with their Georgian too, maybe, but we'll see. Okay, I'll do 2 more and then we'll stop. I talked about sandwiching as probably the most valuable and basic teaching technique there is. Sandwiching, I'm suggesting, is more valuable than being able to explain grammar. It's central. If there's one activity, one single teaching activity which I think is more valuable than any other, it's the activity of reverse translation. It's not done in course books. Sometimes in the teacher's book you see it, but it's not done in course books because of the problem of international course books. This is a follow-up to other activities. So again, we'll take a text that the students have already studied. They've read it, they've done the comprehension questions, they've done the grammar, they've done the vocabulary. At the end of the class, save 5 minutes. Take part of the text, 5 or 6 lines, that's all. You tell the students in pairs, take a piece of paper and translate this text into Georgian, in pairs. Okay? So it's not a test, it's not threatening, it's a quick translation. If they've studied it, they can do it in 5 or 6 minutes. After 5 or 6 minutes, you say, stop. It doesn't matter if they haven't finished, it doesn't matter. Pens down, and you collect the pieces of paper. And the students will look at you in a worried way. Ah, what's the teacher doing? Don't tell them. Don't tell them what you're doing. In the next lesson, or maybe 2 lessons later, near the beginning of the lesson, give these pieces of paper back to the students. So I give you your paper, and I give you your paper. They need to sit with the same partner, it's better. and you tell the students that their job is to translate this back into English. Okay? Now, because they've studied the text before, excuse me, and because they've already translated from English into Georgian, they know the text quite well. They should be familiar with the grammar, and they should be familiar with the vocabulary, but they will still find it quite hard. It will be a challenge. But because they've already done it, they feel that it's doable, they feel that it's something they can achieve, and it tends to motivate most students. What you notice when they do this is this. It is the only time in English classroom teaching when students want to open their course books. They really, really want to open the books because they want to compare what they're doing with the original and they want to cheat. So you have to be very, very strict. Close your books, put them on the floor, get rid of them. And you can see the frustration on their faces because they feel they can almost do it but not quite, they can't quite remember. And I'll push it, they work in pairs, okay, fine. Now work as 4, compare your answers, see if you can get help. And all of this discussion, this translating back into English, is rich language practice. The follow-up is obvious. The follow-up is, okay, now open your books and correct your work. And this again is quite revealing. Normally when we correct our students' homework, they look at the score or the mark at the end, or the comment, you know, the good, the very good, the you could do better, but they never look at the details of our marking. And we waste our time, a lot of the time. When we do this activity, they look very, very carefully at what's going on. And you can also ask the students to mark somebody else's work. And if you're marking her work, you'll look very, very carefully. And then you'll tell her all the things she's got right and wrong. This technique of reverse translation is so incredibly rich in terms of grammar teaching that we should be using it all of the time. And better than that is it's an activity which will take 5 minutes in one lesson and probably 15 minutes in the next, and it requires 0 preparation. Wonderful. One further suggestion of using this as a technique. You're going to be teaching in almost every class, I guess. There'll be some vocabulary work or some grammar work, and there will almost certainly be a boring exercise in the book. You know, there'll be a gap fill, or there'll be a thing with verbs in brackets. This is an example where the students have to identify the mistakes and correct the mistakes. This is not terribly interesting, it must be said, but it's important. And it is important that students do this well and attentively. Well, here's a way of making the activity much more valuable. The students do the exercise, they check with a partner or they check with the teacher to check they've got the correct answers, and then we tell them to close their books. Yeah? Close your books, take a piece of paper. Take a piece of paper, dictation. Number 1. And I dictate the exercise they've just done. Their job is not to write the sentences in English. Their job is to translate them simultaneously into Georgian and write the Georgian. Okay? And that's quite easy, because if the sentence is something like, the strangest or hottest type of pepper is the habanero, that's fairly easy to translate and write it down quickly. Okay? So, I dictate these 6 or 7, there's normally 6, 7 or 8 sentences in course books in grammar and vocabulary exercises. Could be a little text. And the students simply, simultaneously translate and write it down. When that's finished, again I will ask them to compare their translations. I could ask them to compare after each sentence. After 6 or 7 sentences, they have forgotten what the original English sentence for number 1 was. They can't remember it, it's too long ago. So again, the follow-up is very simple. They've got this written in Georgian in front of them, their job is to translate it back into English. When they've done that, they can then look back at the course book and study one more time. This is a way, this is going to take about 10, 12 minutes in most lessons. This is a way of making gap fills and boring vocabulary exercises suddenly fun and much richer. It's simple stuff. Okay. I'm going to skip through because I want to finish on time so we can get a bit more air. I've suggested 5 basic techniques and 3 or 4 activities, which are all ways of using Georgian or the student's own language to generate more English, more intensive language practice. But we need to remember that the point of the lesson is English, and we should limit the amount of the mother tongue we use. So these activities and techniques, don't use all of them in one lesson, and introduce them gradually. Teaching a class over a year takes time, not the first lesson or the second, it's over a long period of time. Introduce them gradually, and as the year progresses, you reduce the use of mother tongue. As the students get to higher levels, if you teach B2 or C1, you can probably get rid of Georgian altogether. But with the younger ones, the lower levels, they'll need this support, and we can do it in a much, much better way. I suggest, when you're back at school after the summer vacation, that at the end of a week or 2, you just take a moment on the minibus or the bus or walking to work, and you ask yourself a question: how much Georgian have I been using? And when have I been using it? And change it around. There are many, many more activities that I could suggest, but not now. That was the address of the blog, the handouts. You'll find dozens and dozens of things there, and links to books and articles. If you've got any good ideas yourself, I would love to hear from you, and steal your ideas, put them on the blog or publish them in an article. I'd attribute it to you. So my email address is there if you want to share ideas on this. Okay. Thank you very much indeed for listening. It's been quite a long, hot morning. Back to Alicia.
My name is Philip Kerr. I'm a coursebook writer, lecturer, a teacher trainer, and this is my second trip to Georgia. I was here 2 years ago, working with the teachers at the Faculty of Philology in Tbilisi, and also working over here in the Teacher's House in the afternoons. I really loved that first trip, so when the English book asked me to come back, I said yes, immediately. But I wasn't ready quite for this trip because we've been to 4 different cities, and it's been exhausting work, really hard work, getting up early, travelling, 3, 4, sometimes longer hours working every day. But it's been really good fun. They've looked after us very well. And the best thing is the same really as my last trip. The teachers here are extraordinary. There were 400, more than 400 here in Tbilisi today, coming at a weekend, giving up their own time. They're keen, they're enthusiastic, they ask questions, they want to communicate with me, send emails, visit the blog, and they are really, really determined to improve. So it's fun, it's exciting, it's very rewarding for someone like me to work with a bunch of teachers like that. I can only say that I wish that the teachers where I live, in Austria, were equally enthusiastic and positive.
გავეცანით ახალ მეთოდებს, ჩემი აზრით ეს არის ძალიან საჭირო ინგლისური ენის მასწავლებლებისთვის.
Now we've all experienced changes, I'm sure, yes, in our lives. Life is full of changes. The biggest change I had to experience was about 22 years ago. When my husband suddenly had a heart attack and dropped dead. Just for a minute, can you turn to the person sitting next to you and just talk about a life change which maybe you have experienced, and what skills did you have, or what skills did you learn from that? Tell people. A bell this size for how many teachers? 400 teachers? But it was with the help of other people who were going, shh. Oh, it's really good. Were you prepared? Did they teach you these skills at school? Probably not. So who taught you how to manage?
Life,
right. What part of life? Hard life. We are living now in a time of massive change, huge change, and it's not going to stop. As you all know, we all live in this. And whether you are teaching young children at school, or middle school, or secondary school, or university, do we know what is waiting for our kids in the future? We don't, do we? There's no way that we can predict. In the past, it was easy to predict, okay, when I grow up, I'm going to be a fireman. But do we know if we will have firemen in the future? Maybe helicopters will fly in, as they do now already, and drop water down. There won't be any firemen. And so on and so on and so on. Or when I grow up, I'm going to be an astronaut. Maybe we will all be astronauts in 20 years' time, or 30 or 40. So we don't know what to prepare them for. But we feel we should do something. Do you feel we can prepare them for anything at all? Can we give them any kind of help or preparation? No? Yes? No? Okay, so some people say no. Let them go and find out. And other people say yes, yes. What can we do? Teach English, okay. All right. Sharing, giving directions. Yes, the moon is straight ahead, up there. Yeah? Sorry, sharing, did you say? Sharing. Anything else? Listening.
They never listen.
They never listen. So
finding the information we need.
Finding the information we need, yes. Maybe listening is something we need to teach. Listening to people, because they can't do it, so we have to teach them maybe to do that one way or the other. We started wondering, people in the world, researchers, not me personally, but researchers said, okay, why? Why are young people not finding jobs? What is happening? Why are they not finding jobs? And one of the answers came here from the chairman of New and Emerging Markets, and he said, graduates are leaving education with inspiring theoretical knowledge, but lack of practical job-related skills. There is a soft skills gap developing. And if we go into very quickly, if we look at more of these soft skills which are divided into 4, we've got thinking skills here. Teachers are often complaining that their students don't have some of these skills too. Creativity, for example, a lot of teachers say our students are not creative. They have no imagination. They cannot solve problems or make decisions. They can't think critically. That's what teachers say to me in Turkey, where I work and live. They also say it in other countries. There are learning skills, the sort of learning skills that Gateway, if you're using Gateway, you'll see it's a very good example of teaching learners how to learn. Computer technology, agility, adaptability, receiving and giving feedback, handling criticism, learner autonomy, self-assessment, etc., etc. So thinking skills, learning skills, working skills, and a lot of these begin at school. Communication, collaboration, cooperation, group work. Time management seems to be a big problem in a lot of schools. Teacher says, okay, I want you to do this project for Wednesday. Wednesday comes, what happens? Nothing, that's right. 1 or 2 students have done it and most of them haven't. That's a time management problem, which has to have consequences. So if we say, okay, I want the project this date, this time, and if I don't have it, that's it. You lose 10% of your total grade. We would soon teach them time management, and we need to include that. We need to be strict. Not like a mum saying, oh, you didn't do your project. Okay, never mind, John. Give it to me next week. Or not at all, it's all right. Oh, sweetheart. It's not going to get us any skills for the future. A new book now called Open Mind, which will be coming out on the market for universities again very, very soon. Full of life skills. Life skills are the key competencies. Not an extra, not, I haven't got time to do life skills, I have enough with the present perfect continuous. Key competencies that enable a person to be effective in different social, academic, and professional contexts. They include a range of transferable interpersonal skills, employability skills, critical thinking skills, and communication skills. So it is very much part of an English teacher's curriculum. It's there.
ეს მასწავლებლები ვიმყოფებოდით მაკმილანის კონფერენციაზე, რომელიც ჩატარდა განათლების და მეცნიერების სამინისტროს მიერ და ინგლისური წიგნი საქართველოში. ჩვენ მადლიერების გნობით გვინდა გამოვხატოთ ის, რომ ჩვენ გავეცანით ყველა არსებულ დღევანდელ სწავლების მეთოდოლოგიას, რომელსაც გვთავაზობს მაკმილანი და რომელიც არის ძალიან მიღებული მთელს ევროპაში.
So then students could present the things they found. This is also something we teach, how to present, how to talk, how to look at your audience and see if they are interested. Is this going well, this particular presentation? Not very well. Also, I am aware that people are fanning themselves a lot, people are getting a bit fidgety now, which is normal. The talking is increasing, so I should finish soon too. This is also a life skill when you're a speaker. There are too many speakers who talk like that, or if you go to Kazakhstan, for example, which I do a lot, the lecture is the lecturer doesn't really care if anybody's listening or not, and everybody's in a coma. And it's increasingly important to give presentations, so we need to learn to teach our students to look at the audience and to react accordingly, etc., 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 etc.
დავესწარი განათლებისა და მეცნიერების სამინისტროს და English Booking Georgia's მიერ ჩატარებულ კონფერენციას და ტრეინინგს, სადაც მივიღე უამრავი გამოცდილება არსებულ ტრეინინგებთან დაკავშირებით, რაც შეეხება მეთოდოლოგიას, აქტივობებს, რომელსაც დავნერგავთ სამომავლოდ საკლასო ოთახში, მივიდანთ ჩვენს მოსწავლეებამდე, სწავლებას უფრო გავხდით თავისუფალ საინტერესოს.
ძალიან დიდი მადლობა მინდა გადაუხადო განათლებისა და მეცნიერების სამინისტროს და ინგლისურ წიგნს საქართველოში, რომელსაც მოგვცა ესეთი არაჩვეულებრივი შესაძლებლობა, რომ დავსწრებოდით, მონაწილეობა მიგვიღო ამ ტრეინინგში.
So, if you are interested in this whole idea of life skills, it's probably in your course books anyway, but there are also more and more interesting things coming out every day. Do go into macmillanenglish.com/lifeskills/resources. It looks like this, and you will find from January 2014 to today, every month there is a different video interview with someone who works in a different job, a writer, an astronaut, a dustman, and each person talks about what life skills have helped them. And there are e-lessons up there, free worksheets, quotations, everything is there for a teacher to copy and use free of charge. So do help yourselves. And that's it, really. Thank you very much.